Did you know that the word coercion, meaning the practice of persuading someone to do something by using force or threats, comes from the Latin verb coercere, which literally means to surround, to confine, to restrain? That sensation of being completely surrounded, your options confined, your free will restrained by the very people you are supposed to trust, is an existential crisis, a profound questioning of one's purpose or existence. Few ever recover from intact. For Chloe Bennett, the moment her parents, with chilling, almost surgical equanimity, calmness, and composure, especially in a difficult situation, issued their ultimatum about the rent and the unpaid nanny duties, felt less like a family meeting and more like a carefully executed, emotional siege. It wasn't a sudden burst of anger. It was the quiet, cold finality of realizing she had been living in a beautiful, but exquisitely crafted, manacle, a shackle for the hands or ankles. This is the story of how Chloe didn't just walk away from her family's manipulative control. She engineered an exit so precise, so legally and emotionally impregnable, unable to be defeated or overcome, that it became a masterclass in establishing radical, personal sovereignty. It's a journey from the stifling atmosphere of a Connecticut suburb where family duty was a euphemism for control to the bright, exposed brick of a new life, a journey rooted in universal wisdom, true historical parallels, and the unwavering, stoic, enduring pain and hardship without showing feelings or complaining, power of knowing your own worth. The historical echo of Chloe's quiet revolution resonates with the ancient philosophical battle between duty and self-determination. Throughout history, familial and societal structures have often leveraged obligation to maintain power. Consider the concept of the filia pietas, from the Roman Republic, a term denoting filial piety, the deep, binding duty, respect, and reverence a child owed to their parents, particularly the paterfamilias, the male head of the family. This duty was the bedrock of Roman society, often overriding personal ambition, career choice, and even romantic inclination. A Roman citizen, bound by filia pietas, would find Chloe's parents' demands entirely reasonable, perhaps even laudable, deserving praise and commendation. Yet, the Enlightenment, an 18th century movement that emphasized reason and individualism rather than tradition, particularly the writings of thinkers like John Locke, ushered in the radical, then revolutionary idea of natural rights, chief among them the right to liberty and the pursuit of one's own life, free from arbitrary power. Chloe's quiet crystallization was, in effect, her own personal enlightenment moment. The apartment, which she had furnished with a reading chair and an antique mirror, had, in her mind, been a symbol of her hard-earned autonomy, self-governance. The moment her parents used the rent as a lever, a quid pro quo, something for something, an exchange of goods or services, in which one transfer is contingent upon the other, it transformed her cherished sanctuary into a gilded cage, a seemingly beautiful or privileged prison. Her years of adjusting, compromising, absorbing, were the accumulation of small, daily sacrifices made to avoid conflict, a psychological toll that is a universal theme in dysfunctional families. The emotional development here is the metamorphosis of appeasement into assertiveness. Chloe's realization that her job, her stability, and her very sense of self were being dismissed as secondary to Serena's convenience was the final, non-negotiable insult. The phrase, "your job shouldn't come before family," is a perfect example of a linguistic fallacy, a misleading argument based on misuse of language, designed to shift responsibility and leverage guilt. The true meaning, beneath the veneer of familial concern, was, "your life is less important than our comfort." This epiphany, a sudden, profound moment of realization, equipped her with the cold, controlled clarity needed for her strategy. Her immediate return to the apartment to read the lease was the rational, financial analyst's response, a shift from emotional reaction to calculated, evidence-based action. She moved from the realm of feeling trapped to the domain of knowing her legal position, transforming their threat from a devastating blow into a paper-thin bluff. This shift is the essence of adult liberation, using knowledge and law as a shield against emotional manipulation. This episode is a profound lesson in English learning. Advanced vocabulary is often the subtle difference between being manipulated and being empowered. For instance, understanding the difference between assistance, helping someone, and coercion, forcing someone, is not just semantic. It's the difference between a healthy relationship and an abusive one. The ultimate wisdom here is simple. Never negotiate your self-worth when the other party is using emotional blackmail as their currency. What is the inherent danger when obligation is used as a smokescreen for control? And how can knowledge, like reading a lease or a contract, be a modern weapon against such emotional siege? The second chapter of Chloe's journey, her meticulously planned and swiftly executed exit, is a masterclass in strategic disengagement, a concept as old as warfare but rarely applied with such quiet precision to family dynamics. Her reaction was not the expected breakdown, but a profound crystallization, a sudden, clear formation of an idea or resolve. The emotional arc moves from wounded betrayal to steely, unwavering resolve. She didn't confront her parents. She bypassed their expectations entirely. Her 3 vacation days, used not for rest but for hyper-efficient apartment hunting, represent a focused, almost monastic, characterized by dedication and discipline, application of her professional skills to her personal crisis. Finding the renovated industrial-style apartment, with its exposed brick, tall windows, and a feeling that was honest, untouched by expectation, is a vivid character moment where the setting itself mirrors the internal transformation. The exposed brick symbolizes the truth she was now willing to face, stripped of the family's curated facade, and the tall windows represent the expanded, unburdened perspective she was claiming. The move was an act of personal reclamation, the process of claiming something back or of reasserting a right. She was reclaiming the space she occupied, the time she spent, and the narrative of her own life. The drafting of the 60-day notice, devoid of emotion and structured only by facts, is an excellent example of using impersonal language as a protective barrier, a powerful rhetorical tool in high-stakes negotiations. The certified mail was the final, legally irrefutable, impossible to deny or disprove, seal on her decision. Her choice to clean the apartment meticulously before leaving, ensuring everything was spotless, demonstrates a key character trait: integrity, the quality of being honest and having strong moral principles. She refused to descend to their level of manipulation or give them any excuse for retaliation, a profound philosophical teaching. She honored her side of the lease, even as they dishonored the spirit of their familial relationship. This action speaks to the universal wisdom of maintaining one's own ethical standards even when others fail to meet them. The idiom, to burn one's bridges, to destroy one's means of retreat, usually carries a negative connotation of rash action. However, Chloe's move was not a burning of bridges, but a strategic relocation of the pier. She ensured that any future connection would have to be built on new, respectful terrain, not the shaky ground of their old control. The quiet rain outside, the sound of the movers, the slow, deliberate action of sliding the keys through the mail slot, these sensory details create an emotionally charged yet outwardly serene departure, emphasizing the inner calm that comes from definitive, self-honoring action. This passage underscores the vital importance of practical English in the real world. The ability to understand a legal document like a lease can literally be the difference between freedom and servitude, the state of being a slave or completely subject to someone more powerful. How does the deliberate, fact-based execution of a difficult decision, such as Chloe's move, embody the philosophical ideal of acting with reason and dignity, even when faced with emotional betrayal? The third chapter chronicles the inevitable fallout and Chloe's measured, unflappable, having or showing no sign of stress or worry, response to her parents' spiraling panic. Her refusal to answer the 23 stacked voicemail icons and her decision to block their numbers were acts of profound self-preservation, a radical boundary setting that finally broke the symbiotic, mutually beneficial cycle of their dependence and her obligation. This phase of her emotional development focuses on detachment, not cold indifference, but a necessary, temporary severance of emotional access to prevent further harm. The arrival of the certified letter at her workplace, a clear act of tracking and attempted intimidation, the action of frightening or threatening someone, force the conflict into a formal, legal arena. This is where Chloe's professional life as a financial analyst became her most potent armor. Richard Cole's office, the lawyer's slow reading of the letter. This scene vividly illustrates the translation of a messy family issue into a clean, legal matter, a significant theme in modern relevance. The lawyer's use of legalese, the formal and technical language of legal documents, in his counterwarning served as an impenetrable buffer, an obstacle that prevents contact or harm against their emotional attacks. This is a crucial lesson in practical English, understanding that formal, objective language can be the most effective defense against emotionally charged threats. The silence that followed his letter, described as theirs, not mine, signifies a definitive shift in the power dynamic. Chloe had forced them to acknowledge her agency, the capacity of an individual to act independently and to make their own free choices through the formal authority of the law. The philosophical teaching here is that true freedom often requires the construction of strong, objective scaffolding, a temporary structure for support, to hold up the fragile structure of new boundaries. The call from Aunt Veronica, a tertiary character, a minor character in a narrative, serves as the necessary narrative device to confirm the consequences. They hired a nanny. It's costing them real money. This detail is the objective proof that Chloe's exit had forced them to internalize the true cost of the coercive labor they demanded, a powerful moment of poetic justice, the fact of experiencing a fitting or deserved retribution for one's actions. Historically, this forced cost internalization mirrors the economic and social upheaval that occurred when oppressive labor systems, like indentured servitude, a system where someone is bound to work for another for a specified time, were finally dismantled. The chaos they created, the responsibility they tried to evade, finally settled, like sediment, back upon them. The final element of this chapter, the request for a mediation session, reveals her parents' character perfectly. They hated losing more than they valued being right. Chloe's decision to attend, not out of obligation, but because she wanted the truth laid bare, demonstrates the profound shift in her character from appeaser to truth seeker. She was now driven by accountability, not fear. This moment of emotional development is key. She was no longer reacting to them. She was dictating the terms of the conversation. In what way does the use of formal, objective language and legal boundaries, as employed by Chloe and her lawyer, serve as a necessary firewall against the destructive power of emotional manipulation? The fourth chapter, the mediation session, is the climax of Chloe's journey, the moment where the quiet dignity of her exit culminates in a spoken declaration of independence. The setting itself, a cold November morning, a business center, is deliberately antithetical, in direct opposition to the cozy, emotionally manipulative living room where the ultimatum was delivered. Chloe, dressed in a dark navy suit with her hair pulled back, embodies the persona, the aspect of someone's character that is presented to or perceived by others, of a composed professional, utterly detached from the role of the subservient daughter. This visual detail is a critical component of her strategy. She brought her work persona, the analyst, not the daughter, to the table. The parents' initial framing, fractured over a misunderstanding, was immediately countered by Chloe's factual, unblinking articulation of the truth. You threatened to raise my rent unless I became my sister's unpaid nanny. This use of precise, stark language, stripped of the family's euphemisms, is the philosophical core of this scene. She refused to allow them to recontextualize, place in a different context their actions. The powerful phrase, "you weaponized rent," is an idiom of modern relevance that perfectly captures the betrayal of using a basic human need, shelter, as a tool for coercion. This entire session is a powerful masterclass in rhetorical strategy for English learning, using assertion, "I expect you to accept that I am an adult," over apology, and demanding consent over accepting expectation. The historical parallel here is to the countless times in history when the oppressed were finally given a platform to speak the unvarnished truth to power, transforming a private injustice into a public record. The memorandum, signed by all parties, is a tangible, ink and paper representation of her boundaries. Though not strictly legally binding in the sense of a court order, its power lies in its documentation. It creates a record that prevents future denial. It's an external, objective truth that cannot be later rewritten by family memory. The emotional high point is the final exchange. Her mother's cracked voice, "I didn't realize you felt trapped," is met with the devastating, necessary truth. "You didn't need to realize. I told you for years in 100 ways. You just never listened." This sentence delivers the key philosophical teaching. Coercive relationships are characterized by a willful deafness to the victim's needs. The father's final, desperate question, "So what happens now?" is met with Chloe's triumphant, self-actualized response, "Now you deal with the chaos you created, and I live my life." The end of the session, guided by Richard's steady hand, signifies not a victory over her family, but reclamation of herself. She walked out into the quiet hallway with a steady heartbeat, feeling completely, undeniably free. This freedom is the reward for choosing truth and dignity over the comfortable lies of manufactured obligation. In conflict resolution, why is the unflinching assertion of factual truth, as opposed to emotional argumentation, the most powerful and ultimately liberating strategy? The fifth and final chapter, set in the sunlit, earned tranquility of the new apartment, explores the complex, slow process of post-traumatic growth and the profound, enduring wisdom derived from her ordeal. The description of the sunlight warming the exposed brick and the steam rising from her coffee is a vivid, sensory portrait of internal peace, contrasting sharply with the heavy, pressurized silence of her former home. This is the stage of integration, where the dramatic actions of the preceding weeks settle into a new, sustainable reality. The idiom, the emotional tug-of-war, perfectly describes the psychological burden she had shed, allowing her to achieve genuine focus in her work, a practical, modern reward for her self-liberation. Her manager's comment that she looked lighter beautifully encapsulates the physical and emotional weight lifted by removing the burden of someone else's expectations. This is a profound insight into the human condition. Unacknowledged emotional stress is a physical and cognitive impediment. The consequences for her parents and Serena, the necessity of hiring a qualified, paid nanny, serve as the final, reinforcing piece of poetic symmetry. The family was forced to honor the market value of the labor they tried to exploit, turning their financial cost into a monthly reminder of the moral price of their hubris, excessive pride, or self-confidence. The subsequent meeting with Serena, human again, and the dinner with her parents, civil, careful, almost fragile, highlight the difficult, non-linear path of rebuilding relationships on a foundation of respect, rather than obligation. The fact that Chloe did not offer to babysit and Serena did not ask is the true measure of their progress, a boundary respected without being enforced. The ultimate philosophical teaching is stated clearly and powerfully. Love without respect is just control dressed up as tradition. This universal wisdom transcends the specific family conflict, applying to every relationship, organization, and social structure. It is a powerful maxim, a short, pithy statement expressing a general truth or rule of conduct for living an authentic life. Chloe's final reflection, that disappearing was an act of survival and setting boundaries didn't destroy her family but revealed what was already broken, is the final, most encouraging lesson for the audience. The message, choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary, is the central, inspiring thesis, a statement or theory put forward as a premise to be maintained or proved, of the entire journey. The use of advanced English, such as self-actualized, the realization or fulfillment of one's talents and potentialities, allows for a deeper, more nuanced discussion of personal growth. This entire narrative is a testament to how the clear, articulate use of language, be it the formal prose of Elise, the measured warnings of a lawyer, or the unvarnished truth of a declaration, can be the ultimate tool for achieving personal freedom.